Okay, great, great. All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
All right, Alan, your screen isn't on, just so you know. Alan, are you there? Is anyone there?
Someone should call him.
I don't know
He
what
was
happened.
there.
He was there, and
Yeah.
now he's.
He just hung up his phone. Maybe he shut himself off.
Do you edit this out of the recording? He's still listed, so he's there, right?
He's there.
Yeah.
All right. We
Hey,
have a
hey.
quorum. We have a quorum, so let's get. I already hit record, so go ahead and
Oh, perfect.
read the blurb.
All right, so this meeting is being held in accordance with the provisions of the edict by the governor to be able to hold remote meetings. All our meetings are going to be, we're recording this meeting. If the votes will be roll call votes, we will put this meeting up on our website and was it BNC TV? And if there are issues with it, we'll continue the meeting and we'll make sure that we have that available for the public to review. Let's do a quick roll call vote. Greg, you're on mute.
Here.
Dorinda,
Here.
David,
Here.
Aaron,
Here.
Bill,
Yes.
Steve,
Here.
Pat.
Yes.
So funny, Pat. I was just calling you when you came on.
Oh.
Renee.
Here.
And let's see. Also, we have a reporter. Is Mike Jackson from the
Montague reporter.
Montague? Thank you. All right, so we just have a couple of really important things to just handle so people can work on our behalf. I try to do an extensive cover letter to save some time during this meeting. For Mike's benefit, just to just do a quick review as we go on to the first. Oh, are there any minutes? There's no minutes to approve at this time, correct? Correct. Okay, so first thing is we have had a communication with the DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We spoke with Chris Lynch and Michelle Griffin. They are supportive of me to follow up with them. And basically they're looking for what they're calling a long range plan. But it's really what they're looking at is, what have we done to include the public? How have we been informing them? What are our plans going forward? And what would this new district look like? So we've kind of, we have a lot of documents around that. So I told her that I put together something for them to review. She pointed out that there's a new commissioner coming on board starting today, and he's from out of state, and will know not a lot about regional school districts and how things are happening here. So she said it's really, thanks Deb Bote for just joining us now. She said it's going to be extremely important for him to be able to read this overview to get a better understanding of what this is all about as we're going forward. So that's really, she put it in the context of, Alan, you're a superintendent. Look at it this way. If you were a commissioner and you were coming in, what would you want to know? I said, all right, that makes it pretty clear. I'll take it from that perspective and move forward. So there'll be follow-up conversations to keep them in the loop. We've had several conversations with Jake Eberwein, who he was the project manager for the Berkshire 8-town regional, they proposed 8-town regional district that they were trying to form. And he was a great resource for them. He did a great PowerPoint presentation. Greg and I and Michelle actually had the opportunity to go up and look at the PowerPoint and hear what he had to say about their successes and failures, what worked and what didn't work. And Desi also pointed out, Chris and Michelle, he'd probably be a good resource for us. So you should have received a scope of work that outlined really the basic focus for him would be to develop a PowerPoint presentation with various venues on how that would be delivered, whether it be a voiceover or a narrative or written. And so I trust you all received a scope of work.
Yes.
And so he's doing 40 hours at $125 an hour for a total of a cap of 5,000. And I was really pleased with the number of things that are in the scope and what he's willing to do for that. So let me pause there. Questions around that before I entertain a motion to have an engagement letter with Jake to perform this PowerPoint presentation for us and the associated tasks related to it.
He's
Again, I
gonna,
tried.
is he going to be the presenter, or is he just providing the PowerPoint and we lead that discussion?
His main focus right now is going to be developing the PowerPoint with maybe a narrative layover or whatever you call it. I guess the short answer right now would be no. I'm pleased that we're being able to get these things done at a smaller amount of money than I originally thought. And our intent, Bill, I think, is once he's really steeped himself in this, which he will be from all the work he's doing, that we could engage him to help us do some of these forums or pre-town meetings and so forth. But
That would also be at a cost.
correct. That would be an additional cost. Focus now is let's try to get something very powerful and very easy for people to follow to get our message out there. Karen?
Has he expressed any desire to talking to this group before he begins?
Well, he, as you know, we did have a meeting with him. I think you attended, Karen. And he, kind of reviewed a number of things that happened in the Berkshires and offered different suggestions. And the point of that was to have you become familiar with his work and kind of his tone and so forth.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure he would be fine with, meeting with us and, reviewing some things, as he goes through this. He may have, I'm sure he'll have questions and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's very approachable and he's just interested in, in kids and as we are. So, all right. Any other questions? Those are good questions. All right, do you want me to entertain a motion? Want me to do it that way and have someone move it, or someone want to make the motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to contract with Jake Eberwine
So it's
for
think I
the
said
for
that,
the
right?
for the scope of services for a cap of $5,000.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Steve.
I mean, I will say that I've worked with him for probably about 4 years now, and he is, probably more knowledgeable about this regionalization than we are. I mean, he's got a really deep knowledge of it.
I also will just add that when we went up to the Berkshires and listened to him present and lead some panel discussions, he's just got a really nice mannerism about him, and he's so approachable. He listens. He's really polished. I'll use that word in communication with different groups of people. So that's why I'm thinking, Bill, that it may make a lot of sense to capitalize on his skills when we get to the phase of organizing some of these meetings.
My question on this would be what are the other deliverables? Like if he's focused on the PowerPoint, and maybe we're focused on the website, what else is there, and then who's doing those? And is that at a cost? Or is it us?
Well, we're going to have to look at doing, picking up some of the things in between. We, as you saw in the cover letter, there's a number of tasks that we need to have done as we move forward. It made sense to have him focus on that. And he seemed interested in being willing to go move forward in some of these other, initiatives that we laid out, particularly in the arena of public outreach. But it felt like too much to put on his plate coming out of the gate, and that he'd have a more realistic idea of what that would entail once he's done the research required to do a comprehensive PowerPoint. So I'm not sure I answered your question.
I don't know. It's just, I guess we haven't solidified anyway our list of, is it flyers? Is it, what else is there to get information to people? And do we need more support? I think we just have to quantify that at some point, like what the other things are that we want.
Right. And that's on the agenda to have that discussion when we get there to see. I don't, some of that stuff, I'll just say, I don't see as a lot of time. Having a flyer that we already have, and do we want to produce that or not, making the decision. Having a QR code that would direct people. I mean, I'd be happy to drive around to town halls and different places and put that up that links people, or short little messages. So I see small little tasks that are added together gets the job done, but wouldn't overwhelm one person if we just divvied up of some of those ideas that that are in the cover letter and that we talked about.
Why don't we,
So let's take a vote.
yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we
on
take a
this.
vote, and we can move on and talk about
Yeah.
those things. I mean,
Yeah.
Dorinda brings up a really good point.
Yep. So let's, Greg, I'll start with you. And
Yes,
so all those in favor,
yes.
and Alan Genovese, yes. And Dorinda,
Yep. Yes.
David,
Yes.
thank you. Karen,
Yes,
Bill,
Yep,
Steve,
Yes.
Pat,
she's
and you're
muted.
on mute. So I'll do Deb,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Raina, Renee,
Yes.
and Cliff. Thank you.
Yes.
Perfect. So Cliff has joined us as well. All right, let's go to the next major item. And I had been worried about this for a long time, and that was what law firm would be willing and have an understanding of regional school districts and what we're doing. And I was hoping that we could engage the services of an attorney that worked with the 8-town regional planning board's efforts. There was someone that actually was on their board and took on many, many hours and had tremendous knowledge in this area and was able to craft language that DESE finally agreed to. My understanding was it was pushed back here and there until they got through having a language that satisfied DESE, and it seemed to be in really good shape. So unfortunately that fell through. And so more exploration went, and came across this the law firm that that was being recommended here, Murphy, Hess, Toomey, and Lahan. They happen to be familiar with the Berkshire project, I'll call it, and represented not the planning board, but represented Berkshire Hills in this process. And so they, had a really good understanding of what this regionalization was about. They were looking at the best interests of the districts and making their way through this process. And so that was a real plus. So then we talked about, they did have an interest. I talked to Kevin, who was is going to be the lead attorney, Brennan Ham. And So he would be working with others. And to make this, what made this interesting for him is we told him that we would send him the Berkshire Hills language that from the legislative piece, which involves the it needs an act of legislation if this were to go forward. And we also asked him if he would work on the warrant article and what that language would be. So Greg had sent those two documents on to them. He's on vacation this week. He'll be able to pick up the ball next week with an affirmative vote here. And what we said we would do is Greg and I would take a look at that language and we would modify it to meet our needs. So for example, they were trying to do a high school. And so, obviously that piece would be, removed. Our towns would be substituted for theirs. We would have the name of our district and so forth. So we're going to tailor it to meet our needs in a superficial way, and then they will use that information to maybe make the lift a little easier, and then they would move forward and craft that language on our behalf. One of the interesting things is that Berkshire Hills never had the opportunity since it did not pass. I think that high school was problematic. That's an editorial note. The piece of bringing it through the legislative process obviously didn't happen. So I want to understand a little bit better how that would happen in terms of, if this were to pass in November and DESE meets their deadline of the 31st, there's a number of things that would have to happen, including a funding source. And one of the things I talked about the attorney is the language would have to have something in there that has pending, and then it would identify whether it be legislative funding or grant funding or DESE funding, but there need to be a number of funding sources. And I reviewed with DESE the fact that there'd be a part-time business administrator, part-time superintendent, could be on a stipend, it could be on a part-time contract. There would need to be a number of legal fees generate around negotiating contracts with paraprofessionals and teachers and so forth. So there'd be a financial commitment there. So I won't go on at length here, but you get the picture of there's a number of things that have to happen. And what would be the timeline that we would expect that, to happen. So that is kind of in the background at the moment, but it's going to come to the forefront as we, move forward. And obviously, if it's voted on an affirmative at town meetings, we would have to have protective language. I say protective, but we can't expect the towns to be picking up this kind of cost. And particularly, my expectation is if the legislators see this as a real positive thing, and DESE sees this, then they should be funding this and supporting us and providing incentives for this to happen. So in the meantime, we were able to secure a law firm that will give us these two pieces of information that are important: warrant articles that would go before the town, and what the legislative language would look like that Senator would have to file. And I can give you an update when I learn more about how does that process go when you're in the beginning of a new cycle at the state level of money. So there's probably a lot of questions around that, but I'll pause and say that my intention is to recommend tonight, so that they can get started, the law firm of Murphy, Hess, Toomey, and Leon to do this work on our behalf. That is capped at $5,700, which from my perspective, I was really encouraged that I thought it would be significantly more. We're estimating 20 hours to do this. This is something that will be in the engagement letter. If there's additional work, we would come back, we'd have to amend the grant, we'd come back to you and have another conversation if a little more is needed. So, yes, Bill.
Yeah, right. The budget issue is currently is forward in my mind, because you've already been instructed by Joanne that our district, Gil Montague, is not going to foot the bill. And we've been advised that there's $55,000 is left in our grant money. Is that still true?
You know, it's funny. I talked to Joanne and she used the number 57 today, and I didn't. I thought it was more like 42. So she was going to go back and reach that. So the
Whatever
it's
it
grant
is,
money.
whatever
have-
it is.
yeah.
We're dealing now with grant money. So my concern with the attorneys was, what is their cap? This is the first I've heard of you capped it at $5,700. That you take 57 and $5,000 for the other gentleman. And so that does bring us down to about $40,000, which is what's in your mind. That's all that's left. Depending on how all of this develops, we need to know where the money is coming from. It seems to me fair that if you do get towns to vote for this, then to some degree, it should be the responsibility of the towns to fund it going forward. It's nice to think that DESI is going to fund it, but historically, does DESI have that kind of support in their background? Have they supported every region that has developed in the last 50 years? I don't know that they have. That's simply a statement. I don't know the answer to that. It's not a negative statement. But in any event, I mean, basically in all of this, we're dealing with a promotion of this regionalization that came from one of the two districts. The other district, Pioneer, has clearly not bought into this. And it gets down to who should be the presenter. If we can't convince people in our districts that this is right, I have a hard time understanding how bringing in a consultant is necessarily going to improve our position. So that's something that will remain in flux. But I do think that most of the generation of this has to come from within, that being our group, being able to support arguments on town meeting floor. Otherwise, I don't believe that having a presentation at just town meeting or leading up to town meeting is necessarily going to convince the town meetings to give us an affirmative vote. So that's the caveat that I have in all of this. Certainly, I support what we're doing, but I'm not sure that everybody else is fully in support of this. And that's what we have to deal with initially. Secondly, in terms of the PowerPoint, you initially talked about this will be developed in July and August. You want to review it early in August. I don't know if you'll have enough developed by the 1st of August for us to really review, or a finished document, or how are we going to adjust that document to feel like it's meeting our needs. But clearly you can see that I have some questions throughout the whole process of whether or not bringing in these consultants is going to be effective. And secondly, are they really going to, when I first read the spiel from the lawyers, I don't think that it's could necessarily be capped at $5,700, given the amount of work that we are requesting them to do. And I'll cut it off there. That's enough from my garbled point of view.
I wasn't
Bill,
that
let me-
impressed I wasn't that impressed by the amount of legal work being required when you consider that most everything lawyers do is just recycling something they already did or finding something that's already been done. So,
So Bill, let me do this. Let me just try to quickly respond to a couple of points, but I need you to correct me or remind me on the points I missed. I think there's been, so you are correct. One district, I don't know if I want to say supports or not supports, but one district has clearly cooperated more in helping us through this process. And at some point, the school committee will review things and make a determination of what they think at in the Gilmontague district. And Pioneer will do the same, although since the beginning of the Hart Committee, they have not supported a number of things. So this is a town initiative in terms of this is not an amendment coming forward from the school committee. Obviously, it's coming forward because the town's asked us to bring something forward. I think that the time frame has been very long, obviously, with our second meeting with COVID and some of the other obstacles along the way, that there's a lot of misinformation out there and not enough I don't want to say momentum, but understanding of, well, what's this all about? What are the benefits? Why are you doing this? And all of that. And I think that needs to be a focus point of the PowerPoint presentation, to be really informative of what this is all about. And we make that available, obviously, at meetings, but on the website and direct people there through a variety of ways. So the public outreach from here going forward has to be substantial.
Yeah.
And I guess I gave the wrong impression if we're thinking that on the beginning of August, we're going to have something, because we're not. The scope was going to be 40 hours and he's working on it in July and August. And I'm assuming toward the latter part of August, we would then have a chance to review this and talk about it and so forth before it becomes posted on the website and it starts to get play in a variety of venues, maybe even on BNC TV. Maybe we go on there, we make it available and so forth. So our biggest challenge
Alan,
will be to get the word out.
Let's stop calling it by the brand name of a presentation software. Call it a presentation. And I feel like part of what we're buying is not the presentation, but organization and a certain amount of strategy to move this forward. I would it's in terms of being a political being and wanting to win some issue, is so much easier to win it on behalf of the opposition. So we have a heavy lift here. I mean, if you were going to pay me to influence the outcome, it would be much, much easier to put this to ruin than to pass it. So, but you say PowerPoint, and it just, people's eyes glaze over. At least anybody that's been around like me, I don't want to hear the word. We're buying a presentation, and but normally somebody we would hire to do that wouldn't know anything about the subject matter. They'd be reaching out to us for all they can, and that would be the critical juncture that determines how good, no matter how good they were, we wouldn't come off very well because we didn't explain it to them. But here we got somebody that's knowledgeable in this exact field. So we're not buying a PowerPoint. We're buying a presentation from these knowledgeable consultants. And if they had succeeded in this effort, we also, have that legislative pathway. So we're like Warwick becoming its own district. Nobody's done this lately.
Those are good points. And I mean that, David. It is about the presentation, but the part of the research and that he pointed out right away is he's got to dig his teeth into all the documents we have and what do we have on the website and what do things look like. So that's a lot of the lion's share that he will be doing before he even begins crafting a presentation. Greg.
Yeah, I think David's right. I mean, we're not going to be able to make this work without, and we've talked about this, Alan, which hasn't been mentioned yet, but we need to find very key people, especially parents of elementary school kids that are excited for this, and that they will begin to be like, we have one in Gil already, and he's very well known, and he's ready to start promoting this, but he needs information and he needs some guidance on what the talking points will be. But we're going to need to find some parents in every town that are well connected and can start to, I mean, to me, there's some real issues here. I mean, Pioneer's looking at regionalizing their elementary schools into one campus at a tune of upwards of $100 million, with, you know, the three towns kicking in, you know, what, 30, 40%, depending on what the MSBA would kick in, which they're probably not going to kick in more. I mean, that I don't think that has a prayer of a chance of passing. It's just too much considering what's going on in the world right now. And so, you know, we've got that happening. Montague is also talking about closing Hillcrest and moving their kids into from that school just because the building's old. That's also, you know, being discussed. So those things have to be brought into the context so that these parents understand that things are not going to stay the same, regardless of how, even if they want them to stay the same, and that this is a real opportunity for these two districts to, and three districts really to come together, to save capital costs, to save, to, you know, build economies of scale and build back programs that have been lost for 30 years. So, I mean, we just got to find those parents that are excited about that, because we're not. As much as I look around, you know, we've been doing this for 6 years and I see a lack of energy here, and me included. I mean, I'm done. You know, I'm kind of like done, which is why I feel like we need some fresh energy. We need some, you know, Jake is great because he is very personable, but that's not going to be enough either. They don't know who he is. We need parents, parents that are gonna get excited about this in every town, and they're gonna have to start picking up the phone, because it's not gonna be the same anyway. I mean, you can take the examples of looking at the teams. You know, we had Montague win a state championship. We had, you know, Pioneer win 2 this year. I mean, will they even have teams next year? I mean, you know, Pioneer's looking at a high school of about 100 kids next year. I just did the math. I looked at the DESI numbers and looks like they're going to be down probably another possible 10 to 12 students. I mean, the numbers they don't lie, and they just keep going down. As much as all the good things that they're doing, it's a battle that's really tough to win when you're already low enrolled and declining enrollment. So, you know, that's what we have to keep just pointing out, that we have a real opportunity considering what's going on right now.
Yeah, Deb just pointed out there are 16 students in grade 12. An interesting note, just to follow up, and I don't want to sidetrack too much, that that's a big ticket for towns to come up with. I'm wondering, just would it change the conversation if people started thinking about, well, wait a minute, if the high school kids create a critical mass and now you have programs, services, and so forth, because those kids are going to the Gil Montague district, that opens up room at Pioneer for the middle school, but it also would open up opportunities for, if the towns really wanted
Yeah.
to move their elementary school.
Alan, please, you taking my idea?
It is your idea, but I just want to put that out there because you
I
brought
know,
that up.
but it's going to be
And-
spelled out in an article for Mike.
Right. But
I
I
just
thought it would
wanna-
be good to have them have a heads up that it's
Okay.
possible that they could, they could move into that building and not have to spend a lot of money. So that's going to be an article that Greg is working on, and a thought that he thought is worth just exploring to put out there for people to think about.
And
So,
Mike, this is to Mike. Mike, I'm going to get you a couple of articles, and that's going to be one of them. So it goes into more detail about saving, a pretty significant future capital cost for the Pioneer District if those towns do want to regionalize their elementary school. It would save them a whole lot of money if they took their high school students and send them to the Turner's building and make that a designated high school. And then you have a K-8, because a couple of things that comes to mind is, as someone that's taught at that level for a long time, once a kid hits 9, has gone through 9 grades, K-8, they're not going to want to stay in that building. They're ready to go. They are going to be ready to go, and they're going to leave. And so a K-12 is a really tough thing to sell at $100 million. Especially
right.
when it's 100 students.
So we're off track. Just take me
Karen-
care of the legislative piece. if
Karen
we
had her
could.
hand up.
Oh, is it on this topic? I was trying
It's
to get
on
back to
an
the original
earlier
topic.
topic, but I was letting you go here.
Okay.
I had a meeting this morning with a small political group in Leiden, and they expressed that they've heard nothing about this. They don't understand it. I recounted some of the history of the forums we had and all of that. And they expressed really wanting to know more about it. The sooner the better.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. And that's the gist that I've gotten. When are you going to really fill us in? We need to know a lot more. So I'm sorry I brought that up. There's a lot of possibilities that could open up. So to stay focused, I would entertain a motion that we have an engagement letter with Murphy, Hess, Toomey, and Lahan to do the warrant article framing and the legislative framing on our behalf at the amount that was $5,700. And that came about, by the way, in a conversation with them about how many hours do you think would be reasonable to accomplish this work. And I think it would have been more if they hadn't been familiar with representing Berkshire Hills in the 8-town effort.
And we have that motion and second already, don't we? So now you're asking for the vote?
I don't think we have a motion on the legal one. We had one on the Jake.
I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion.
Yeah.
All right, and Dorinda seconds it. And you had their bio in your packet or sent to you and so forth, and the scope of what that work would be.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a roll call vote then if there's no other discussion. David, why don't I start with you?
Aye.
And Dorinda?
Yep.
Alan, Genevieve, yes. Greg?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
Deb Patay? Okay, so that passes unanimously.
And Cliff, add Cliff.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Cliff.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. All right, so I think I've covered everyone on the screen. So then the last thing, so those are the two major things because they can continue working on our behalf. Let me just share that when the subcommittee that worked on the regional agreement concluded their work, there were a number of comments about how important it is to and would be a heavy lift, so to speak, to really get this message out. And there really needs to be a full court press on informing people of what this is about. And one of the things that, one of the ideas that came up with is if someone had a Facebook page that, you know, directed people to our website, or, you know, people could express their thoughts for and against and so forth. And there'd be a way of people asking questions that we could monitor. And maybe at the end of each week, we'd look at those and craft a response and then have those on our webpage, or our website, so that we could keep track of that. One of the things that Jake had pointed out that maybe more effort could have been put into responding to misinformation, or you know, letting people know what was happening and trying to get on top of rumors out there. So that would all, you know, be a challenge as well. But it's something that we, when in talking to him, want to be mindful of, to make our best efforts. That if we hear something that is misinformation or needs more clarification, that we try to do that. So Dorinda, do you want to talk a little bit about on the next steps in terms of how do we move forward on some of the ideas for this outreach effort? I tried to provide a narrative around each one so people could be thinking in terms of how to put these forward. I think that to Greg's point, if we as a group could start reaching out and finding people that would like to learn more about it, and then they could make a decision how active they want it to be. We should be doing that ASAP. And if we could have a time frame of people bringing together names and their email, so that we could have a meeting with them to answer their questions and start developing a network of support, so people have a better understanding. And if they're talking to their friends and they're talking to people who might have an interest, we could start these little mini brush fires all over and see if, you know, this turns into a forest fire. Literally, figuratively speaking. Karen?
Yeah, I'm just looking at Leiden at this point, and most of the people who are involved and engaged are the majority in town, which are older than 65. And so this would be quite a lift. I'm not engaged with younger folks. I'm engaged with people my age. And those are the people who have time to do that, obviously. But it's also sort of a tradition in this town, as you might have seen in that Recorder article yesterday, that there's a certain group of people that are on every committee. That's what our town is, because it's so small and we don't have a lot of younger folks. So it's going to be difficult to find those people in this town.
Well, maybe that younger person's primary strategy doesn't work in Leiden or Warwick. It's the same thing. I mean, so these are the opinion leaders in the community.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They're,
Oh,
you know, they're
like I
either
say-
tolerated positively or
Mhm.
neutral.
It might be easier, Karen. I mean, I just looked up the population of there's about 200 children in Leiden, so they can't be that hard to find. You know, and it's such a small town, you know, that I mean, to get the
200, eh?
that's what it looks like, a little over 200 out of
Really?
60.
We got here in Warwick, we got 60 some kids in our school
Yeah.
district, some homeschool kids, but
So a lot of times, you know, it's a small amount of people to get informed right away and let that filter then through the community, because they're the ones that'll get excited about the problem.
in terms of openness to change, I've been contacted by several people in Leiden interested in specifics about becoming an independent school district, and in terms of becoming an independent school district with no schools.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard that
So there's
talked
some
about
openness
here.
to change and some
It's
recognition.
they, I think they delved into it quite a bit, and financially it would be a lot more than staying with the district that they're in.
Yeah, just taking on school busing yourself without reimbursement.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah.
Dorena, can I go back to you in terms of, so there were a bunch of ideas that we talked about when we just got together and brainstormed. Do you have some thoughts about our strategy on how we might implement some of these? And, would it be reaching out and asking someone, could you do this one? Or what are your thoughts?
Well, every time I've posted on Facebook, I've turned comments off because Facebook has, it's sort of people's worst instincts come out
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
I can stop doing that, or I can use it in a very specific way, asking for support and contacting for support. I mean, they can message us on Facebook, they can message us on the website, and it's never happened. So I think, we can get word out there more. I've been waiting until we have a district agreement, because I'm sort of like, what do I put out there? Like, we put
Yeah.
out stuff a year ago, I can put out the same stuff, but there isn't anything new.
Right.
So other than,
So it is possible.
coming soon, but there's nothing you can see. It's the same thing as before. So strategically, I'm not sure like what to push and when to push it. But we can do Facebook, we can direct people to the website, we can make little flyers up that say the name of the website, that kind of thing. And all that's easy. It's just like when I still don't really know.
I was thinking toward the end of, I'll call on you David. I was thinking toward the middle or end of September, or mid-September. To your point, until we have had an opportunity to really get the word out and some of the particulars about the expectations, I think it would be dangerous to start inviting questions without at least a base level knowledge that we made a concerted effort to have an outreach and get this information out. Then maybe it makes sense to open up the question. But I think that was smart of you not to have that open at the moment.
Yeah. And I don't, it seems like we're well enough connected in Warwick, we're well enough connected in Gill and Montague. It sounds like Leiden's small enough, but I don't have a sense of Bernardston and Northfield. I know there are like strong opponents. There's opponents on the school committee. There's opponents in the schools. There's like parent opponents. There's all sorts of opponents up there, but to me, they're far away. So I don't know how to like access that or build a support network up there. So if people on the committee have a better sense of that, I would appreciate that.
So let me go to David, and then Pat, your thoughts on Northfield and, and what you think might work. But let me go to David first.
The point I wanted to make is that on public Facebook forums, while it is a bit tedious to enforce, if you as a commenter, you can block certain people's comments, and it's invisible to them and their brethren. So they go ahead and they have their own sidebar, ridiculous conversation, and meanwhile they're cut out of it. That would be, something that you initiated. You'd have control over the content. I don't know how much value it adds, to even do that, but there's a certain amount of people that it is their, local news source pretty much. But it's tedious, but it does work. I'm on some public political forums with, I think half of the things I may be Russian bots, or losers in their mother's basements. I'm not sure, but
Interesting. So that's the dilemma right now is going back to Greg's comment, and Jake had pointed that out. We need to start forming a base of support of people that are interested, and not just parents, other people that maybe could speak to what the district could be like if we had a larger population. You know, what opportunities would there be for kids? And I don't know if it's a one size fits all in terms of the outreach in the various communities. I guess I was thinking that way, that to be fair, that there would be a baseline message or theme in every community, but maybe the outreach needs to be tailored for what would work in that community. So we have Deb and we have Pat that are in Northfield. Thoughts about what you think should be the strategy for outreach in Northfield? Or
Do you want to go
Northfield and
first,
others.
Pat, or?
Go ahead and I'll pick up after you.
Okay. Well, I've talked to people about it, and I agree with Karen that most people still don't seem to know about it, which is very frustrating because I do feel like there's been an effort. I think people just haven't bothered to actually investigate it. I think it has to be very much in people's faces. And I also think that the articles that have been in the paper haven't really been very clear. I haven't felt like they've been very clear. I mean, I'm dying to write a my turn, explaining the numbers of people in the school, explaining exactly what it looks like, and just explaining why it would be so important to be able to do this. And I would probably do it on my own theories why combining is so important, because for me everything is about the health of teenagers. And I'm a big believer in social engagement. And if you have a tiny school, then it's very hard to make friends. I mean, that's where I come from. But that would be what I would want to do, is like multiple My Turn articles along with Facebook, and just tolerate the feedback. I do think people are going to feel very much like, oh, but our school has done this and our school has done that. When I've spoken to people, and I've spoken to a couple of people, and I think I know the person that maybe is excited, Greg from Gill. And I think it'd be really important to hold discussions, in public spaces for people to come and meet with us, whether it's at the library. So that's why I think that presentation would be really helpful, in the sense that it would give us a place to talk, and then it would be a discussion. I just feel like people need to talk to each other in civilized, thoughtful, sort of more intimate settings, so that people can really just hear rationally about why we've had this committee meeting for all this time, the work that we've done, but also just focusing on what's the reality out there with numbers. Because I can tell you this, when I talk to people about this, nobody has any idea how many students are in these high schools. They really don't. And I think numbers speak pretty clearly to, I was shocked at how few students are in the elementary school in both Northfield and Bernardston. Shocked. So, and I've been tracking all the high schools, of course. I just would want the opportunity to engage face to face with people. So I do think having a presentation that's ready, and then but talking to people now and coming up, each of us has to come up with 5 people who want to sit down and talk. And I think picking people who are younger, have students in that schools, are going to be more powerful than almost anybody else. School committee, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful. I've got a brother-in-law on the school committee. He feels very differently than I do. He had a very different experience. They are not everybody. And when I've spoken to people, there are people at Pioneer who are interested. So believe it or not, they are. And there are people who work in the school who are interested, in the elementary school who are interested. I just think we have to focus on parents, because I think parents and the students are going to be the most important people for the future. If you get an elementary school parent who people know and are comfortable with saying, this is a good idea for my student, that's going to be more important than somebody who's on the school committee, frankly.
Pat, thoughts?
I think we have to get the information out there, because if we don't get the info out there, people are not going to come to meetings.
Right.
I mean, it sounds awesome to say, oh, we have to have all these meetings. Well, that's great, but you're not going to go to a meeting if you don't know what's going on. And I think in Northfield, and I don't know about Berniston because I'm not there, but we don't have, our town officials have been dragging their feet. The school officials have been dragging their feet. And so maybe in Gil Montague, you don't have that. But for us, that information has got to get out there one way or another, and in a way that it excites people and not just go to a meeting. Oh yeah, another meeting. They've got to come away with some energy.
When I'm talking about meetings, I'm not talking about, oh, it's a public meeting and we hope somebody shows up.
Okay,
I'm
that's
talking about literally inviting people, saying,
Shows
I'm
up.
having this thing at this event. I'm inviting
Okay.
5 people to have a conversation, and I've already started doing that. So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
You should
all right,
each
good.
find 5 people who are engaged in some way in the school or in the town and have sit down conversation. People can come to my house. They can meet at the library. There are multiple places that we can do this with. I think we have to do that kind of work. And I'm not talking about holding a meeting that hopefully someone shows up. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about meeting intimately with people over coffee or tea to talk about what we're talking about. And I'm talking about picking people, specific people, and inviting them in. People, and I will say the select board in Northfield, they know about what we're doing. Bijan
they
is
know.
all over it. She knows all about it. Brian Bedreau knows all about it. They know. Dan Campbell knows all about it because I talked to those people. And
I know they know about
I don't think that they're holding back anything. I think they're very clear about the numbers.
Interesting.
Yeah, Karen, I'm going to call on you next. I just want to make the comment about these conversations. If we're having these meetings, which I think is a great idea, then maybe this is after presentation of words are out there. It's inviting people to ask questions and have conversations, and the conversations are what they generate and what they want to talk about, and we try to address them. I agree that I think that would be really, really powerful. It's getting the information out. Let's do Karen and David.
Sure. I just looked up the 2020 census, and we have a little over 100 children as of the 2020 census, and that goes from 0 to age 19.
Well, there you go. So my search was wrong.
Yeah.
So it's getting worse, but that should be even easier to find
No,
out.
well,
It
actually,
should be easier to find those 100 kids.
actually, the largest cohort was the 0 to 5. And that was 33.
Time to get those parents.
I don't know who they are. Where are they? You should ask someone who is not 3/4 of a mile off.
Yeah.
Off a main road, which is still a dirt road.
Yeah.
But I do think if we come up with our 3 to 5 people, we ask them, who are the people that are not in this room? How do we build on this? Can you give me those names?
And I know where to.
Can I pass them out? You just have to find one person who's willing to share out.
Yeah, and I think that's our librarian.
Yeah.
Because she has one of those children.
Renee? Oops, I'm sorry, Karen. I don't mean
sorry.
to.
But
Karen,
there was an outreach play group through the school district that, the kids would come if they were interested in playing, and I happened to see them as they were coming out the last day that they're going to have it before summer. So I know they're out there. And one of those children is the librarian's child. So
Okay,
there you go.
so that's the first one on your list of
Yep.
reaching out, maybe. Renee, and then David.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide a Berniston perspective if that's something that the committee is interested in. I'm can speak to that the select board is clearly aware of the work. Because again, I think to Greg's point, or whoever made it earlier, that was our task. We were tasked with this work from those boards. So
Yeah.
they are well aware of our work.
Mhm.
All the different tangents that Pioneer has gone off on have created quite a distraction from this work. And I myself, as a committee member, am very distracted because of the length of time that this has taken. And I, again, think Greg pointed that out. Like the work is just too fractured at this point for me. Like if people ask me about the work, I don't even really know anymore. And I feel like to honestly answer any inquiries that come my way, we didn't really talk about the elementary schools. This group was formed about the middle school and high school and the realities of how the document is going to get written, about elementary schools are going to be an essential part of the success of this new district, but it hasn't been given any airtime yet. So I don't feel confident discussing what will come of it and what it really means to the new district being formed to elementary school parents. And I'm pretty well connected with elementary school families, being that my job is with them, right among them, both Leiden and Berniston folks. And it's not in the forefront of what people are thinking about or talking about. But I don't think we've done a good job thinking about all the things, especially now that because we're 4, 5, 6 years old now, the world has changed. Like we're not talking about relevant issues. And so we don't have a crystal ball. And so I just don't feel confident as I did at the beginning of this work. So I don't know how to change that or what to do next, but that's what I feel as a member from Berniston.
All right, thank you, Renee. And I think that, you're correct. Some people thought that elementaries were not a part of this and that, the new regional school district, each town still had their elementary school. And a couple of people I mentioned that to were surprised to hear that. So you're right. We've got to make sure we're getting out good information for folks. David, you were let me do David first because he's been very patient, and then I'll go to Greg.
Did I just understand Renee to say she doesn't understand what our position is on elementary schools? Because I felt it's that we are going to keep on having one in Warwick and that wasn't in question. Anyway, the point I raised my hand about
Renee, you're
is-
on mute.
Hey, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry. My point, David, is that at the beginning of this work and with this new district being formed, so every town has the right to continue their elementary schools. We already experienced the difficulty of that in Pioneer. So are we saying that everything at the elementary level remains status quo? Well, that seems like it's kicking the can. And why do all this work if all the elementary schools get to have autonomy? We know that if growing the district and growing the opportunities of students lies in greater numbers, then that seems disingenuous to say that's not true at the elementary level.
I mean, I would chime in here, David, in saying that when we started, that was the proposition was to let elementary schools exist the way they are. Now, what's happened since then is that the towns within these two districts have decided on their own, regardless of what we're doing, we had nothing to do with it, of suggesting putting, Northfield and Bernardston elementary kids into one building. That's a regionalization. And that's an intro.
Got no prayer.
I know, I understand that, but here's my
These school
point.
committee members have been instructed not to talk to select board members. And
My
they
point, Alan, David, is that I know it doesn't have a hope or a prayer, but the point is, it's an opportunity for us to say, look, if you are putting those kind of proposals on the table, you know, that's fine. That's our regionalization doesn't even have to stop that. If you want to regionalize, but here's a great way to make it not cost $100 million, which would be regionalize into this regional district. You could still do a K through 8 in that building. Hear me out, right?
we
And
heard you the first time.
I know, but this actually strengthens Warwick's position to just remain an elementary school because you are regionalizing elementary schools in both districts. I think it strengthens the position of Gill remaining its own entity, and it just becomes because they're doing this already in the other district. I mean, in the other schools, they're talking about closing Hillcrest and moving those schools. There's no need at that point to be taking and closing Warwick and closing Gill. In my opinion, it strengthens the position.
Well, I think the problem is going to be that DESE's not going to permit a regional agreement that doesn't provide for closing of elementary schools. I think they do learn from past mistakes in other districts, and Pioneer had to go into financial default in order for legislation to pass to abrogate a clause in the district agreement that says you can't close an elementary school. And if
Sure,
there
but
isn't
we're not doing that. We're not doing that though. We're not exclusively saying we can't close an elementary school.
So let me just put that on hold for now, because let's see what DESE has to say about the language we have in there, and we'll pick that up later. I want to go back to what I'm hoping the focus is on our last agenda item before we adjourn and pick up some dates. And going back to you, Dorinda, the Deb put out a great idea about each of us and getting the word out to those that couldn't attend today, to find 5-6 people to have a conversation with and share information. I'm wondering, Deb Pote, if that makes sense. As soon as we get this, because I think, to Renee's point as well, it's been a while. And so the fresh look from Jake's perspective, who we hired to dig in, do the research. I know he's going to start with the enrollment, because that's the heart of this in the beginning of the presentation, and then move on to, what's possible for kids and so forth. That it might make sense that we get that information, we review it, it gets us back up to speed and current, and then we have these conversations. Now, maybe it's too late. Maybe we should start them.
I'm struggling with waiting. I'll be honest with you. I feel like I've waited. We've all waited, and I'm already starting to talk to people. And I'm not going to sit here and say to anyone, "Oh, I'm an expert. I'm going to give you a presentation." I'm just going to talk about, just open up a conversation, just like. And I'm going to put right up front. I'm not going to be able to give you numbers. I'm not going to do anything like that. I'm going to talk about the numbers of students in the schools. As Greg pointed out, you can find it all from DESE. Put all the numbers down. I'm going to talk as a clinician, as a LICSW, about the importance of social connections for students' mental health. And I'm talking about why I believe consolidating, regionalizing schools will be better for students than not. And I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen to what they have to say. And if I don't have an answer to their question, I'm going to say, I don't know. If I can find it out, I'll email Greg or you, Alan, and get back to them. Or I'll say, wait until September when we have this presentation.
Yeah.
But I feel like the time is now for us to be out there talking to people. I'd like to talk to, is it Isaac Bingham? I'd like to talk to him. I'd like to talk with Stacy Bond. I'd like to sit down and have a cup of coffee with those two people and talk. So I'm going to go do that, because I feel like that's one way I can contribute, is to be able to talk to people and listen to people.
How do you think would be the mechanism that, because you're going to have a lot of good information, Deb, and each of us doing this, where do we share that information of what we learned? Do we Dorinda, do we open up?
Maybe in our next meeting, I don't know, but I'm going to make every effort to have at least one conversation with some people who seem to be engaged and interested in the town. I'm not talking to people who are no longer engaged. I'm only talking to people who have skin in the game.
And is it possible, Dorinda, that information, generally just gets to us in something on our website that people can, sort of keep in the loop of conversations and what came up and about the conversations, so that we're all benefiting from what we're learning in our conversations with folks?
I think if things come out as sort of pieces of misinformation that can be in the FAQ, we can figure out ways to include that there. I think once, when we see Jake's presentation, we can have targeted posts with specific information or specific truths, like, did you know this, and then share that information. I'm like, sort of, it does seem like I'm just worried too much is on me to, not that I'm like afraid to work, but I'm not like particularly socially engaged. And, like I am in my town, but like to like that I'm going to be like, vetting what this information is and how it's out there and making sure that it happens in a timely manner to the right direction, and knowing what the particular forums are for different towns. It's a lot of information that I don't have, and I'm a little bit concerned about that.
I do think, and sorry, I keep jumping in. I think it'd be great to team up with someone from Gill and sit down. I'd be happy to team up with Greg and talk to people. I'd be happy to team up with Renee and talk to people from other towns, so you don't feel like, oh, it's just on me, and get a cross section of communication people. I don't know if that's helpful, but I think doing it alone is not a good idea.
I'm not doing that. Basically, because if I'm managing the website, I'm managing content that comes in. If I'm going to be putting things on Facebook, that's like, in handling graphics or doing flyers or that kind of stuff. It's like, I can't also be like, I can't do that.
No, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do all of that. You should just do what you do best.
Which which would be like,
yes. Yeah. I don't think everyone has to do what we're talking about. I think you have to be willing to do it. And I'm an introvert, but I force myself to have these conversations with people.
Yeah. I guess I need more information from someone about like the proper channels in other towns online for giving information to people.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put a lot on you in terms of trying to be a conduit for putting information out. I was thinking more of if there was an internal way for people, as we're having these conversations with various folks, to just share that each of us we just could go there and see, what those conversations were about, or what was learned, or whatever, or what the misinformation is, that we would just review, and that when it's appropriate, maybe address that at a meeting on, okay, how do we, like you mentioned, some of this could be filtered out to question and answers. Some of this could be, there's some information, a number of folks in the towns had a misunderstanding of this. We probably should get a document out or get some information out, not you, but, we tackle that, and then figure out venues to, maybe it's an article in the paper or something, but to address that. But the only piece I'm hoping is you could be a conduit for putting this together for us to see. That's all.
Right. I'm not afraid of content creation, if people are getting the information, but it feels like until I have that information, because people are waiting for information, it's like, I need to know, what to give them and where and how, and I'm not there.
Yeah.
So
with that, and a lot of people are waiting. Montague, every time they have a select board meeting, they're complaining that they don't have information for us. They don't have a date for the fall special. People are waiting, And I'm feeling like it's on me a little bit, not to be like, dramatic about it, but because I'm like, there's something I'm supposed to be doing that I'm not doing yet. And I'm trying to like figure out what that is.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we schedule another meeting and have this be, because we've got the other two now working on our behalf. And why don't we make this outreach effort the sole pretty much conversation? And Deb may have the benefit of having a couple of meetings with people, and she could tell us what she learned, and we could sort of
I would
finalize how we're going to go forward with our outreach.
I would suggest we don't have time to wait. And I
No.
think Deb's right that I think what we should do, Alan, is we spend too much time talking about what we're going to do, and we just need to start doing it. So
Right.
I think what we need to do is I think Deb has the right approach. If each of us in our town, or someone that's in our town on the board can just make some inquiries. It's, you can literally, you must know somebody with kids. I do. I know I can get in touch with some of the families here in Gill and reach out to them and say, they're going to be dialed in to other families with kids and say, all right, would you be willing to team up with me so we can have a conversation, bring your your friends that have kids, and we're going to sit down and have it could be in a living room, somebody's living room. It doesn't have to be in some public space. It's just getting the word out there and getting them excited. I mean, if each one of us does that, or at least if you don't know anyone, then get in touch with somebody that does, find somebody who does, call your town hall. Who can I call that, that has kids that we got to start getting the word out. That's what town halls do. So just get in touch with a couple of families and say, look, we need to generate some energy around this. Does this excite you? If it does, can you help us contact other family members so that we can set something up where we can all get together and have a frank conversation, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about what this is, what it means, what the districts are like now. I mean, a lot of them have their own sort of personal experience with it, but that's just one experience. So anyway, that's is to give us a concrete plan, Alan, of just each one of us has to reach out to at least 2 families to get the ball rolling, right? Fine, we can have another meeting in let's say 2 weeks after July 4th and everything else is over, and say, okay, what did we learn? What did we learn from these 2 families we connected with? What did they tell us? Where did they point us in the direction? Like, who is the social butterfly that really has the pulse of the elementary school? Because there is, guaranteed, there's like 1 or 2 people that are going to be like, oh yeah, you should talk to so and so. I'm just thinking off the top of my head in Montague, someone like Christina Postero, who was always, in the thick of everything. So, I'll pick up the phone and call her. She's probably still connected up there in Montague. Those are the kind of people we need to start reaching out and say, hey, we got to get momentum with this. Help us out.
I don't think that's going to work at all in Warwick, because we've got this new school district experiment. It is extremely popular. People would love to get into it from out of town. And I think that I'll do it, but my next door neighbor's kid just graduated this year. I'll meet with them. But I think they're going to say, we don't want to change anything.
David, it's on you to basically let them know that things are changing anyways. It's going to change whether they like it or not. So,
well, I'm not sure. I think Warwick is unfortunately in a position.
David, you're K through 6. They got to go on to middle and high school, and those middle and high school.
Warwick doesn't vote to get rid of its school committee and its superintendent. Then my understanding is this whole proposition fails, because
then find somebody else, David. If you can't promote it, find somebody else that can, because it doesn't sound like you are promoting. All right.
So let's not.
You got to decide if you're in or out.
Wait a minute. So let's not we can have that conversation later. I want to stay focused on, let's have these meetings. David, you and I can talk some more too. Let's have these meetings.
I think any kind of delay in talking about this, people is a big mistake because
No,
if
no,
we-
I don't want to delay.
Oh,
I want to
very
have these
soon.
meetings, have these conversations as soon as possible. Let's meet in a couple weeks. Let's share that. That'll be the focus. But also the focus will be some of these ideas which may come out of these meetings, these coffee clutch meetings, or whatever you want to call them, on our strategy going forward. Because we've identified here are ways that we can get the word out. So maybe what will percolate out of this is what will resonate with folks on how to do this as well. And we can share that because we have ideas on the table in our outreach efforts for September and October and early November. So let's use this as step one. Let's get a meeting date. And then we can conclude.
15th. That was your earliest date. Why can't we do it the 15th?
Bill, is there no school committee meeting on the 15th? You meet Tuesdays and
Our meeting is next week, the 8th, and the 15th is open to answer your question.
okay. Why don't we put that in?
Sure.
Okay, and 6:30. And
Did you say the 15th or the 16th?
16th, it's a Tuesday.
No,
15th.
the 15th.
15th is. That's why
15th is a
15th.
Tuesday.
Okay.
And then what about the 29th?
I'm away visiting my first grandchild,
Yep.
and I will not interrupt that.
What about the 22nd? It's just a week later. And
But earlier, later
no,
than the 15th.
we do the 15th, we did
Yeah.
it next week on the 22nd, and then we won't be getting back together again until August, beginning of August,
Right.
maybe the 12th. August 12th.
Well, I'm not going to put it in because you changed things around since the last.
I had in the 22nd
You did have the 22nd.
and the 12th and the 26th from our
Right.
previous meeting.
Yeah, and we decided on the 15th.
Right.
I'm just one of a mess, but those two dates won't work for me. We've got family visiting from France, and I want to
Ooh,
spend all the time I can with my
yeah,
kids. So,
Yep.
yeah.
so I'll
Okay.
just have to go online and find out what's been going on.
Cool.
And you could share, I could have a conversation with you. You could share me with me if you've had a conversation with some folks. And I could pass that on.
Probably won't, just because
Okay.
if I've got family
Okay.
that I only see once a year, I'm going to spend all the time I can with them. Sorry.
When they coming in, Pat?
They're coming in on the 9th and staying through to they're staying for 3 weeks.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
It'll be fun.
All right. So we have the 15th right now, and let's meet there, and then we'll see where we go. Okay.
Okay.
It was productive. I thank you for participating. I don't want to have this go much longer because we had a lot of good discussion and we've covered two basic things and we're going to see if we can get some momentum going.
Great.
All right. So is there a motion to adjourn at 7:55?
So moved.
Karen moved. Second.
I'll second it.
Pat seconded. Alan Genovese, yes. Dorinda,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Bill.
Yes, and Alan, thank you for all of your work.
Yes.
Oh.
And Greg.
Yeah, Greg and I have been, we thank you. Thank you for that. That means something, Bill, because sometimes all you need is someone to say, yeah, thank you for what you're doing. Because
Yeah.
sometimes I just think that do people understand how much work this is?
Well,
And I'm doing
yeah.
it. And I think Greg and we all are to see if there's opportunities for kids that to can give them more than what they're getting now. So we'll see. All right. Thank you. All right. So that passed unanimously. So we'll all sign off and thank you for your participation. This was great discussion.
Sure. and see you in 2 weeks.
Yes, indeedy. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Good
Good
evening,
night.
everyone.